Hey, I wanted to talk to you about Sam Calavitta, because I'm very fascinated by that guy.
He's a different breed of human being. Coach Cal, you should have him on.
I would love to.
He's like the best. He's literally the best guy in the world.
Coach Cal, let's do it.
Yeah.
This is like one of the most respected strength and conditioning establishments in the world.
Yep.
And it's a normal suburban home with a 2-car garage, and that is where all these people go to train with one of the best training strength and conditioning coaches.
Understanding a little bit about the cancer treatments, I view it as nothing more than a coach or a general of an army, because there's a plethora of cells in the body. Some are bad now and some are good. And the universal treatment of these therapies is to basically blast these guys, but in doing so, the collateral damage is the good guys are going to basically become compromised as well. At the end, if the good guys aren't compromised excessively, then you live. If they are, then you don't. These guys win, the bad guys. And so in a very simplistic state, I basically developed a plan with you guys to help hedge the probability of her good cells being able to withstand the onslaught of the treatment. One of those treatments was hyperbaric oxygen.
Open that faith, and I think it's important. And Coach Cal, when we first met, it was actually a video call we had. Juan, a good buddy of mine, he found out that Parker got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and he called me. He said, "Hey, you got to reach out to Coach Cal." And I've heard about you before that time, just from Juan, going to dinners with him and him bringing up the fact that like he just mentioned you, like man, I'm going through my training right now. In fact, I remember he came to my birthday.
Yeah, I was going to say, in La Jolla. We were at dinner.
In La Jolla. We were at
Torrey Pines.
Torrey Pines. And it was Coach Cal. He was in some camp, but this is probably 4 years ago now?
Yeah.
Maybe 4 years ago. He was going to fight somebody, and I don't remember what the fight was. It was a big fight.
It's probably Patchy Mix.
It might have been. It was in December.
Okay, yeah.
And man, we're all eating some good food, and he shows up with this bowl, and he had his own meal, and the entire time, man, like you said, he's disciplined. Like Juan is one heck. I mean, he's a disciplined guy. I've known him forever, and he was eating. I said, "What are you eating, man?" He's like, "Man, I'm Coach Cal's got me on my nutrition," and he even had like I think he was wearing like a watch or something that he had to. But he was talking to us about us, and so I knew about you from the stories that Juan had told me. But he called me. He said, "Paul, listen, you got to call Coach Cal and have a conversation." He's like, with him and Monica, they're like the best people I know. You got to have a conversation. And I said, absolutely. So that's when I text you guys. And then the same day, the same morning, I got a text back with a Zoom link, and we hopped on a Zoom. And in that moment, I just felt this comfort that I had somebody that was going to go to battle with me. And to be honest, that was the most broken time I'd felt as a man, was just trying to get through being the rock and the support for my family. I had just gotten that news, and I was in the midst of that, and it was the toughest time of my life.
It is.
And I remember having a conversation with you and leaving that conversation with this assurance that, man, this is going to be difficult, that there's a battle, right? There's a war that we're going through, but I got a guy that I don't even know really that well at all yet, but I just feel like he's with me. Like he's going to help me put together a strategy to go out and conquer this. And I remember you gave me you said something that really impacted me. It was something about like going to fight. When you're going into a fight, you don't just learn one way to fight. Mm-hmm. What was that quote again? Because I want to hear like you said it. It was about like going to learning. It's multiple strategies. Like you're gonna fight, not just learning how to box, but you're gonna learn how to wrestle and grapple. Like if you gotta hit it from every angle. Is kind of what you were telling me.
Right.
And I remember you saying that, and it making sense to me, because all I knew was what I knew up until that point. Mm-hmm. And then we came in, and I met with you guys in person, and you started talking about the hyperbaric and the real life therapy and the different things for Parker. And man, your guys' heart in the whole thing was just something that I had not really experienced. The love, the support, And it really helped me champion me through that season with Parker. And, we got to know each other through that. And, those therapies and God used you guys to help get the victory and claim the victory that you were talking about when we first met. Like, hey, we're going to win this war, but there's some different ways we want to attack this. We want to hit it from every angle. And going from the first PET scan where Parker had cancer all over her body and to the very first PET scan where the doctor said, hey, we're hoping that it's just going to be slowing down. And the doctor's saying, I don't see anything there. And then being able to call you and give you that news that Parker was cancer free. And now she's back to soccer and in school. And I just want to thank you for that, being the man that you could help me through that season. And I just believe that, man, like iron sharpens iron. Mm-hmm. That's such a powerful word, because like people need people that care and that are with them, that are for them, and we don't know what anybody's going through. And when you can be that for somebody, man, that's just, you don't realize the difference that it's making. You know what I mean? To get around a community of people that can support, that love you, that got your back, that as you go through life's battles and struggles, they can kind of be there to help support and help you win that war. And so thank you, Coach Cal, because it was a big deal.
I don't deserve any thanks, because I can only give what I've received. And I remember when we spoke, Paul, when you came in, and I remember talking to Monica that this daddy has his little girl with stage 4 lymphoma cancer, and how the only reason I was able to feel in her was because we had received 20 years prior. I mean, I told you the story right there. I wanted you to understand that this is not in and of me. It is God's grace. Because I told you, I said 20 years prior, my son, Antonio, was admitted clinically dead into shock. He collapsed and died in my arms. He waxed over. And it's crazy because me, as the macho, work hard, get your butt up and stuff, my little boy had been deteriorating for a week. We didn't know he had a rare blood disorder. And he had been deteriorating so much so that his heart was actually coming out of his neck like this, beating hundreds of beats a minute. And we could see it there. And we didn't know what was going on, Monica and I. We were trying to give him nutrition, things like that. But he was 6 years old. And then he came out one morning, I cut him up an apple. Here, you need this, champ, you need this. And he tried to walk up, and poor little guy, man, he's doing everything. And I should back this up because, in all due honesty, show you what a fool I am. That night, he was screaming, his body's hurting and stuff. And so I'm trying to put him in the bathtub, and I'm doing things like, come on, be tough, shut up, you're okay, all this stuff, I didn't know what was going on. We thought it was like a fever or something, and so I was a fool, straight up. He got up the next morning, so finally his bowels let loose everywhere. Everywhere. That was the first time we said, something's pretty bad here. So the next morning he came in, and he didn't come in, he was on the couch. And I came in, gave him the apple, and I said, come on, let's go, let's play some cards. Come on, like, this is all mental, it's all in your head, right? So the little guy, God bless him, man, he stood up, took 2 steps and collapsed on the floor. The bowl went down and broke, and he went out. He went yellow. So I grabbed him in my arms, and we had 4 or 5 other kids, I don't know how many in the house, and grabbed him, ran him out to the car. My wife, Monica, went to the car. The police officer next door saw him and said, oh my gosh, this kid's checking out. She jumped in the car, took him to Chalk Hospital. I went back in the house with the kids, and I was just an absolute mess because in my own stupidity, I was ashamed of me being this dad trying to say, hey, get up, there's nothing wrong with you, whatever. And she took him to Chalk. They got him in. They checked him in. They took him in the tunnel under the street to the emergency. And my wife goes, she's trying to be optimistic, and she goes, when will we pick him up tonight or whatever? And she says, I don't know if he's coming home. So they made my son comfortable to die through the night. His hemoglobin level was a 3. If you know anything about blood work and stuff, you know that that's about 5 times less than it should be. His respiration was 0, yet his heart was beating at an exorbitant speed because his body had no oxygen in it. Basically, he was dying right in front of me. And at that point in time, I would have given my life, as you could relate. But the realization that as much as I love my son, he loves him more. And there's nothing that I can give that would satisfy my son's life because he already gave it. But I was a turd. They're trying to keep my son alive, and this angel doctor came in. She was a believer, and we named our daughter after her. Her name is Dr. Diane Nugent. We named our 6th child after her. She came in upstairs, and I'm sitting there. I still remember the Calvary Chapel sweatshirt I had on. I know exactly which one it was. And she did something I'd never experienced in my life. She said, Dad, we need to do a blood transfusion right now. Monica's sitting there, and I said, no. It was the height of the AIDS scare. And I said, heck no. She says, Dad, we need a blood transfusion on your son. And I said, absolutely not. Well, I was putting the nails in my son's coffin. And she reached over. My hand was on the table. And she put her hand on mine, and she began to caress it like this. And I felt this love in her. And she said, Sam, she said, if it was my son, I would do it. And I looked at her and I said, okay. Turned my head and she was gone. She was absolutely gone. They went and did the transfusion. They did spinal tap. They did all those things to him. And then they put me in the room with him for the rest of the night. And I got to watch the life come back into my son on the meter through the night. And when he lived, the nurses on the cancer ward of Chalk, which was 3rd floor at that time, started crying and jumping up and down that this little boy was a miracle because he wasn't meant to live. Everything I did was wrong. Everything God did was right. But he used that person's compassion and that person's love, who I didn't even know. It was done and said, my son decided that he wanted to go to UCLA, become a hematologist and a doctor to save little kids' lives like his. So when I say don't thank me, I don't deserve thanks. Only Christ deserves the thanks because he used another person's compassion in my life and had the mercy on me to not have to watch my baby die in front of my eyes as they were ready for him to die, and let him live. I'll never forget her. And so this is how God's love perpetuates. And so I told you at my door, I said, Paul, I want you to first of all understand that somebody can sit here and say, I know how you feel, brother. I'm with you, brother. And I didn't say that. I said, Paul, I want you to understand that I know what it's like to be a helpless daddy and to want to give your life and that life not be good enough. And I truly can have compassion on you because compassion was given to me through another. And so the true thanks goes to him. So that's true. And that's what I saw. And at that point in time, then the fighter came out of me. Now we're going to battle. We're going to battle, and we're going to hit this from a multifaceted array of modalities. We're going to work. We're not going to try to pretend to be doctors, because doctors become doctors for a reason. They don't spend all that school doing things that are going to hurt people. But their hands are tied on certain protocols and measures, which you have now experienced. The allopathic end is strictly driven and regulated. What we do isn't. But we're going to run them side by side. And we're going to fight this together and treat her body the way God intended and watch the miracle take over. And we're so blessed when we got that call from you, and you got the Zoom call from the doctor who said, I've never seen this. Like, she went from stage 4, and I saw the PET scan you showed me. It's all over her body, to there's nothing in her body 27 weeks early. At 9 weeks, you came to my door, Paul, and you said, Coach Cal, they told us that these 4 types of chemo that she's taking are going to emaciate her. Her hair's going to fall out, and she's going to be a shell of herself. Yet she looks better and is more vital and has not lost a hair. How do you explain that? And I said, I don't know. Remember, I said, I don't know. Ask the doctors. You went and asked the doctors, and the next week they said, let's run a PET scan. And in 9 weeks, it wasn't in remission. It was gone. Mm-hmm. So we were privileged to be part of the miracle that God was doing. And then you had your subsequent battle with the next 27 weeks they wanted to do. But she's home. Her immune system's coming back. She got over that little cold. She's back in school. And because of that experience, which I would not will on anybody, you'll be able to talk to somebody who was maybe from this podcast. They're going to call you, or you're going to see them out there, and you're going to look into their eyes, and you're going to see them through Christ's eyes of compassion that could not have otherwise been there, that somebody else had given to you because of him. So it all circles back to him, all of it.
It does.
So,
well, the thing is, your availability to be used by God, and continue to pass that blessing on is such a big thing. And I witnessed that yesterday. I had a phone call from a good buddy of mine, and he said his partner that's an officer with him, his little boy, he just got diagnosed for the third time. Third time it's been in remission, where it's gone from his liver, and then it was cleared, then it went to his lungs, and now it's in his lymphatic system. And I shot you a text message to connect you with him as well. And I had a 30-minute conversation with him where, I would have never been able to have if that didn't happen. I was able to pray over him and talk to him about the situation, because it's like you said, you don't know until you go through something like that. Mm-hmm. To have those eyes where there's empathy and mm-hmm. understanding and compassion, for them. But I mean, what you've done is made such a massive difference, even with, Parker not losing any of her hair. But the other thing, and I know God had his hand and he was using you guys and working through you. And I believe he put us all together for this exact, purpose and time. Mm-hmm. She didn't even get a sickness. Like all the sisters, I got 5 kids. My little guy, my son, they all got colds and strep throat and all kinds of things in that 5-month period. She didn't get one cough, one nothing, because when you have the central line in, if you get a fever, you got to get an emergency, ambulance right to the hospital, because they don't want the infection to attack that. And so she never even got a cough. And I know that a lot of the things that we put Parker and took her down to the training lab to do the recovery center, it definitely helped with her immunity in her body. And I love the fact that, just like with your fighters, you have the data to show them how far they can go. Mm-hmm. And so now you know the perfect picture of where they can go, what that potential is. And now you can push them there with an understanding of how to do that. And it's all calculated, Mm-hmm. And it was the same thing for Parker. You knew these things, nutrition and stuff that I didn't know. And I was just thanking God that I had somebody I knew I could trust, and I just had to take action and execute. But you're instrumental with helping with all these things that I didn't have any kind of clue of, that made such a big difference. And I think that's what you do, is help attack the enemy, the battle, from every perspective, whether that's the training, whether that's the nutrition, and all those different things with the science to back it. Can you elaborate a little bit about those kind of things like that help Parker out? Because I'm not privy to kind of talk about it, but I just know the impact that it had for her, and how it played a big part in God healing her and being the miracle that she is today. So can you kind of elaborate a little bit from a scientific level on why those things work the way they work?
Yeah, I mean, I'll do my best. First of all, is miracle God. That's the bottom line. But understanding a little bit about the cancer treatments, I view it as nothing more than a coach or a general of an army, because there's a plethora of cells in the body. Some are bad now, and some are good. And the universal treatment of these therapies is to basically blast these guys, but in doing so, the collateral damage is the good guys are going to basically become compromised as well. At the end, if the good guys aren't compromised excessively, then you live. If they are, then you don't. These guys win, the bad guys. And so in a very simplistic state, I basically developed a plan with you guys to help hedge the probability of her good cells being able to withstand the onslaught of the treatments. One of those treatments was hyperbaric oxygen. And a lot of people don't understand hyperbaric oxygen because they associate it with Michael Jackson. And they associate it with celebrities who use it for youthful rejuvenation, trying to stay young forever, plastic surgeries and things like that, it's very good for wound healing. And people should kind of take note of that because it works. And I'll explain why in a second here. But if we have to look at it from a perspective of God, He made the universe, He made the planets, He made the stars. Why is it that we are the only one that has 21% oxygen, 79% nitrogen, which is the exact mixture of gases that we need with a few trace elements in there to sustain the cardiac respiratory system of a human being? Well, tell me how that evolved. I just want to know, because if we evolved, did the gases evolve? Were they there? Were they perfect? What did people do? How did people live without the gases being there? Or did the gas come first? Did the person come first? It's foolishness. But the bottom line is there's one molecule out there basically that the human body cannot exist with, and that's oxygen, period. In fact, the entire energy system of the body is based on using the oxygen molecule to create ATP, or adenosine triphosphate, period. When you eat something, say for example like a carbohydrate goes in, and now we have to get that into our cells. So it goes through what's called a glucose transporter, whether that be a GLUT4 transporter or a GLUT2 transporter. There's all different kinds depending on the tissue that you're in. Then that comes in and it gets bound by an enzyme, glucokinase or hexokinase, depending if you're in muscle tissue or liver tissue, and that locks the glucose molecule or in there, which is C6H12O6 molecule. That then begins to go through what's called the glycolytic pathway. And the glycolytic pathway basically says you go to glucose 6-phosphate, fructose 6-phosphate, fructose 1,6-bisphosphate, branches off into dihydroxyacetone phosphate, then glycerol 3-phosphate. Then it goes down in continuing in that cycle to like 1,3-bis glycerate, 2-glycerate, all the way down to phosphoenolpyruvate and into pyruvate. Okay? The reason I said that is just so you can see the importance of the oxygen molecule. That's just to get the carbohydrate through. That makes very little energy. Okay? Very small amount of ATP. Not enough to run the human body. Okay? But that pyruvate molecule then has to make it into the Krebs cycle, or called the citric acid cycle. To get there, it has to be met with an enzyme called pyruvate dehydrogenase complex, which essentially is nutritionally sound, tender, loving care for Nancy. T for thiamine, L for lipoic, C for CoQ, tender, loving care for. This here is riboflavin, FADH2, and Nancy is niacin. These, combined with oxygen, allow that glucose molecule to come into the citric acid cycle, which is a Krebs cycle. That then becomes acetyl coenzyme A. Acetyl coenzyme A is basically what happens. Acetyl coenzyme A comes in, gets hit with oxaloacetate and forms citrate. Citrate then goes into isocitrate, then into succinate, alpha-ketoglutarate, succinate, all the way through. Succinyl-CoA, malate, all the way through the Krebs cycle. In my head here, I can't get it all in all the words right now, but the Krebs cycle then basically sends electrons in the form of NADH into, that was it, fumarate, malate, oxaloacetate. Got it. Okay, got it.
Yeah, you guys got to remember that. It's going to be on the worksheet.
Yeah. Just as I was going through and I'm sitting here talking, okay. So, but basically what happens is that NADH, you guys have heard of NADIVs and things like that. Well, that's because your body is making that, and that NADH goes into basically the mitochondria, inner membrane, where the electron transport chain lies. That electron transport chain basically has a complex 1, which is called NADH, nicotinamide adenine dehydrogenase. Okay, so that NADH goes in there, it passes through sulfur iron clusters, and it passes a proton into the inner membrane space, 2 protons actually in, and then that makes its way through the electron transport chain. And these are some of the therapies that I used with Parker, is that electron has to make it through to complex 3 and complex 4, because complex 2 is coming from a different source. Okay, 1 comes from carbohydrates, complex 1. Complex 2 comes from fatty acids, which is called succinyl-CoA. Okay, so we have here, so we're here. We need to get that to carry across. That electron needs to make it across and then make it into what's called ATP pace, which is basically the machine that makes ATP in our body. That's the currency for energy in the body. Okay? So, me liking that, let me just kind of expand on that a little bit. Like if you went to Las Vegas and you went to the cage there and you said, here's $100 to the cashier. And the cashier said, all right, well, what do you want? And he says, give me quarters. I want to play slots. And he gives you 400 quarters. You go, all right, well, that's cool. I'll go play quarters. And so you're good there, right? But if you went up to that cage and you asked the cashier, here's $100 and give me quarters, and he gives you 100 back, you go, hey, something's wrong. You're not cashing me the quarters. I don't have enough energy to play the slot machines as much as I want. Conversely, if you went up to a cashier and the cashier said, you gave me $100, here's 1,600 quarters, you go, yeah, I got more bang for my buck. The body works the same way. If this electron transport chain isn't working, then you're getting less quarters. If it's working okay, then you get standard quo. But if you're metabolically efficient, then you're actually going to get more out. So the bottom line was, in order for this reaction to happen, that electron has to make it across. The carrier for that is CoQ10, which you know about. Now CoQ10 we enhanced using chromophores or chlorophyll, igniting it with the right frequencies of near-infrared light to then be stored in the blood and to carry that electron across. Once the electron got to cytochrome C oxidase, which is the 4th transport, it now has to be picked up by molecular oxygen. So now you heard oxygen twice. To get the carbohydrate into the Krebs cycle, I need oxygen. To get the electron over and turn it into ATP, I need oxygen. So what happens is that oxygen comes in down and accepts the electron, and in doing so, it allows the energy to be transferred into ATP pace, turn what's called the stator and the rotor, and stamp out ATP from ADP. So adenosine diphosphate to adenosine triphosphate, ATP right there, okay? So, not to get you guys all goofy on science here, I just want to draw the picture of the beautiful complexity by which God uses oxygen. So we cannot live without oxygen. Yet, many cancers are highly anaerobic. They prefer to fuel off lactate, not oxygen. In our fueling system in our body, if pyruvate cannot make it into the Krebs cycle, there's not enough oxygen, and it cannot be used by pyruvate dehydrogenase complex, then it goes and gets basically combined with LDH, lactate dehydrogenase, and makes lactate. And we fuel off lactate, which is very few ATP. Okay, Otto Warburg in 1938 or whatever got the Nobel Prize for discovering this. And that's why he used bromopyruvate as an antidote to cancer. So bottom line is in my very simplistic mind, I need to get oxygen in this person's body. Well, I'm breathing out here. Basic pathway of oxygen is you breathe through, and by partial pressures, you have oxygen go in, you have CO2 come out. That's how it all works. Goes into the alveoli of the lungs, passes through the alveoli, a basement layer, right into the circulatory system. The red blood cells pick it up and put it on the hemoglobin. The oxygen gets on the hemoglobin, goes for a ride on the body, and gets released by what's called the Borg-Haldane dissociation curve in the amount of CO2 in your body. That is all governed by what is called the carbonic anhydrase reaction, which is CO2 and water mixed carbonic acid, which is H2CO3, which then transfers into a proton, which is hydrogen and bicarbonate. This is how the action works in the body, okay? The bottom line is the oxygen goes in the red blood cell, gets swished across, and gets carried away and delivered in the body. The body can make ATP, the organs, the liver, the brain, the kidney, the ATP in those cells, okay? All right, well, it's all being made. At this point, though, the issue becomes, could I possibly get more oxygen in there? Well, that's true. Oxygen is a gas. Gas under pressure becomes a liquid. According to Boyle's law, Henry's law, and even Pavlov had some things in there also. So now, if I can take an individual and I can put them in a hyperbaric chamber, I can have them breathe near pure oxygen and put them under atmospheric pressure, which is it's not nearly as deep as people think. It's not like you're going down hundreds of feet. It's like about the deepest you're going to go is like 33 feet, 1 atmosphere, 1.5 atmospheres, maybe 2 atmospheres at the most. But what happens is the oxygen becomes liquid. The liquid can now diffuse straight into your plasma. Now remember, I told you the red blood cells, they float in the plasma right through here. But now I have oxygen on my red blood cells, but I have oxygen in my plasma. It gets perfused or pushed, push is another name, through the body, through the arteries, arterioles, all the way down to the capillary diffusionary sites, where it's dispersed using what's called fenestrated capillary openings, continuous capillary openings, or sinusoidal capillary openings. But it's pushed into the body much more aggressively than it would normally be released in the body because I have pressure behind it. So it's like this. If I said, hey, Paul, here's a hose. I want you to water these flowers. And you turn the water on, and the water just kind of goes in a little arc to your flower bed right here. And I look and I go, what are you doing? You go, well, Coach Cole, you told me to water these flowers. And I said, those flowers across the street. And you go, well, I can't. And I say, why? And you say, because it doesn't have enough pressure. Exactly. I want to perfuse the oxygen into the tissues. If I can get that oxygen in there, a plethora of things take place, which I sent you some documents on it. One is red blood cell production. So now we have more oxygen carrying things. One is stem cell production from the bone marrow, good stem cell. One is white blood cells. Well, that's great for infection fighting. All these things you just mentioned about Parker. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I won't even talk to you about the endothelium and the glycocalyx layers in the endothelium and things like that. So in a very simple way, I said, if I can get this oxygen into this little girl's body, then I believe that we can basically make more payout for the slot machines, which in my mind tells me that you will now be able to have more energy for your organs to fight, for your body to fight, and to fulfill the processes by which God made it. So all I did is take a very simple molecule that God gave us, which, by the way, if you read a little bit about the flood and things like that, it's really neat to hear what the barometric pressure estimate was when before the firmament broke, because they basically know beyond a shadow of a doubt that it was a barometric pressure that was very close to that of a hyperbaric chamber, which I think is really, really cool. And so cool. Should it be, okay, well, let's just tie this together. I get to going on these tangents, but it's cool.
It's a good tangent. I feel a lot smarter than I did before I asked the question.
Yeah.
I feel like I want to go out and think I could get a degree now. It's good.
But it's cool because it goes back to the rejuvenation thing. Do you think Michael Jackson and all these people in these chambers are wrong? Well, wait a minute now. People say, oh, Methuselah didn't live to 900 years. People didn't live 500, 600 years old. Say, well, wait, now let's stop and live a second here. Those were before the flood. That's when we had the firmament, the water above, the water below. We had a barometric pressure that was hyperbaric. Therefore,
that's interesting. I never thought about that.
Yeah.
Therefore, what would happen? So we have these people living these lifespans. And we have these people that are growing. Huge. These giants, things like that. Go look on the internet. You can just look. What happens if you put cherry tomatoes in a hyperbaric environment? Go look at the studies. They end up grapefruits. So when people say Goliath was 9 feet tall and 500 pounds, yeah, I agree. I agree completely. Do I have a problem with a reptile being that big? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So basically, these people are saying, well, you know what? I want to do this to stay young forever. Well, the model was already there. It happened in the flood that became as a result of our own sin. These guys are living 900 years old, but if you follow the age genealogy, over time, the age came down, and the Lord said the average age might be 120 years old if you're lucky. Did it just happen? Or did the barometric pressure actually get reduced and the hyperbaric environment actually become lessened?
Wow. I've never heard that.
Me either.
But it's all true.
Yeah.
So did these guys live 900? If the Bible says it, yeah, they did. Right. Well, you got a metaphor. No, you don't. If God said it, that's it. So bottom line, if you can give me a better reason, then that's fine. So this is telling you also in chronological terms that the earth can't be billions of years old. Okay? So with that being said, going back to if I could keep enough oxygen coming through the body, then I might be able to give it a fighting chance to keep enough ATP. If I can keep that ATP going, I can give her body a springboard from which to hopefully fight this battle on one end. So that was the hyperbaric end. Then the ingredients that I gave her was to optimize these things, okay? Because she's going through all these treatments, and I'm using basically modalities to attenuate oxidative stress or free radical production in the body. Free radicals are basically, just think of it as if you had somebody who was intoxicated and they were driving their car down the street here, and there was cars parked on either side. And he's going, boom, hitting this one, hitting this one, hitting that. You see he's ruining the cars, right? Well, that's what happens. A reactive oxygen species basically is a molecule with an unpaired electron. And that becomes a free radical. And if it's a free radical, then that free radical bumps into all the other molecules to try and steal their electron. But in taking theirs, it becomes a cascade, forming basically that, like the cars getting bumped on and ruined. So what I did is I used another molecule that God made. I used hydrogen, okay? I didn't just use H, I used H2, which is called molecular hydrogen. But molecular hydrogen has a very, very, very specific target and purpose. It single-handedly seeks out one of the most heinous free radicals in the body, called the hydroxyl free radical, the OH negative ion. That is really interesting because it is actually one of the end products of ATP production, when the body goes from molecular oxygen down to superoxide, which is O2 negative, turns it into hydrogen peroxide through nutrients, zinc, manganese, and copper. Yep. And superoxide dismutase as an enzyme, then moves down to hydrogen peroxide through basically catalase and selenium. And then that turns into the hydroxyl free radical, which now needs to get turned into water. So there's no more issues in the body. That uses glutathione peroxidase, the enzyme, to do that. Oxygen is a key player in all this. But that free radical in the body is something that causes destruction. So in a simplistic state of mind, I said she needs more oxygen. I don't want to sound smarter than I'm in because I don't have much smarts, okay? So in a simplistic way, she needs more oxygen. I can get it in her. Number 2, she needs to have the free radicals get their fannies kicked. Well, I happen to know that molecular hydrogen will do that. I didn't just read it, I became certified with the Molecular Hydrogen Institute so I could understand it. So I put her on the molecular hydrogen machine. Then I used photobiomodulation. I used certain frequencies of near infrared light to ignite chromophores, which is basically what you find in plants or chlorophyll, which then speeds up the redox reaction of ubiquinone to ubiquinol, otherwise known as CoQ10, which is the carrier that carries the electron across to get scooped up by oxygen into ATP. So I basically said, well, then I'm going to go ahead and I'll use nutrition and the way God made the body. Our bodies do this naturally when we go out in the sun. So I used it. So I used the carriers, I used the oxygen, I used the hydrogen, and then I used the nutrition. Our world is full of toxicities. Right. I said, Paul, we have to eliminate what's going in her that's bad, and we need to hedge what's going good. And so I started talking to you about these chemicals and toxicities in our society.
And I never knew until we had that conversation. You know, now I think it's kind of like once you're exposed to something that, once you're facing something that you never faced before, you start to pay more attention. Once my daughter got diagnosed with cancer, then all of a sudden I became more cognizant, more highly interested in all these different things, And as we spoke, we would leave talking to you, and then we would go back and say, okay, what kind of routine and regimen can we get Parker on? And the crazy thing is, man, she's, and Coach Kyle, I want you to talk about some of the nutrients and what you've put in place for Parker. But man, she's so disciplined with it. I think I was telling you that the other day, like she will not eat nothing. She's more cognizant as an 11-year-old than I think most people about what to eat, what not to eat. She's looking at the back of things, if there's ultra preservative or if it's ultra processed or processed at all or preservatives. She's not eating none of that stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like, I think there's a lot of people that they might look healthy, but inside their body's dying without knowing it. Mm-hmm. And I was telling you, when I was in high school, my first year in college, man, I looked great, man. I was low body fat, but I was eating, like, for breakfast, I'd have a muscle milk shake, right, with milk and the protein, and then for lunch, I'd have a whole box of the, like the container, like the Tupperware that's got the deli meat. Mm-hmm. I'd have the whole thing because there's no carbs, And at dinner, I'd have 3 cans of tuna with 2 cans of green beans, and I'd stir it up in a pot, and I'd throw some Lowry's on it. That's what I ate, And I remember feeling like I felt sluggish, and I didn't feel good. I looked good, but man, mm-hmm. I didn't feel good. And as we met, and you put together that slide, and you went through and unpacked like what water and all these things that do. And the thing I love, and I want to talk about it, but I thought about this last night. I was watching a podcast, and I think it was with Dana White, and I want to say it was Gary Brecka. And yeah, Gary Brecka. Mm-hmm. And Dana White was drinking water, and he made a comment like, oh, that's molecular hydrogen water, mm-hmm. And it just seems like now more than ever before, there's more people with ears to hear about what's been going on. It almost kind of just like came upon us where we didn't know what we didn't know. We were just consumers. We were consuming what they put out. If it's easy, let's throw it in the microwave. It's how I grew up. Like, it's a fast, whatever they called it, like the, what was that called? Like the dinner in the microwave or whatever.
The TV dinners?
TV dinners, and I mean, it's just, we didn't know what we didn't know. I never thought like this stuff was killing me. Like it was causing my body to go to the cage and give $1,000 and get 2 nickels back.
Exactly.
And what you've done with Parker, and like I'm telling you, like she had a glow about her. Nobody can make any sense. And I give all the glory to God, and I know you said it. You said, hey, Paul, that this sickness is not unto death, but to his glory. And you told me that scripture, I believe, when you were telling me about your story with your boy. And God's shown his glory on Parker from the very minute that she got diagnosed to all the way through it. But man, she had such a glow on her. When she was going through chemo and putting those toxins in her for all those hours, and it was something that we had to do because she's a child and everything else, but she just looked like she had a glow. Like she looked more vibrant than ever before. And we cut out all these things, and we started to do these things that would give us the ability, like you said, Coach Cal, to go to the cage and say, hey, let me give $100 but get $1,000 back. And who doesn't want that, right? Like who doesn't want to feel excellent? And the beautiful thing is it didn't just impact Parker, but it's impacted our family and our extended family, where we're all eating different. We're all more cognizant of what that looks like, and we all look better and feel better. I told my wife, I was like, babe, you look young, girl. Like you're looking good. And it has a lot to do with the adjustments we made when we became aware of these things that you can have. Like these are things that are like anti-aging that can help with your internal health and everything else. Yeah. But talk a little bit about like the some of the things that if there was a couple things that people would be important, that if they stopped eating these couple things, it would make the biggest difference for their overall health, to make the good exchange. And maybe a couple things that you think would be beneficial for them to start feeling a lot better and like starting to have their body do what God intended it to do, like you said, and operate at more of an optimal level. Because to me, everything that you've done with Parker is just really give her body the ability to operate at the optimal level that God intended it to operate at. But in these other external environments and different things that we put into it and where we're exposed to, it causes us to have that be a lot lower than what it was created to be. So can you kind of highlight maybe a couple of those things? So anybody on here that's like, I want to, feel better, but like, what could I stop eating? What's really hurting me because I'm not aware of it? And what can I start eating that'll kind of help really fuel your body up?
I wonder if before you get into that, if we should wrap this, we should make this bonus content.
Yeah, we should make bonus content.
If you want to know what to stop doing and start doing, what to eat, what not to eat.
Yeah, what to boost your energy. We'll do that. So you guys you guys watch the bonus
content. If you've made it this long, God bless you, man. I feel smarter. I feel like, man, you just dropped so much wisdom on us. I feel like I can become a better husband, a better dad, a better just pastor, just because of the knowledge and time that you spent with us. And so thank you for coming and really using your platform, because you're world renowned. People are after you. They want to know what you have to say. And thank you for blessing us with your time, your gift, your ability, your knowledge, your wisdom, and pouring it out on us, man. We thank you. Absolutely.
Thank you, Coach Cal.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Well, hey, guys, don't be just hearers. Let's go out there and be doers. Put these things into practice and sit back and reflect and think about how you could apply it, because at the end of the day, the goal of this podcast is not just to be a little bit more information, because who knows that we're on information overload. We got stuff coming at us from every direction. The sole purpose of this podcast is to leave you better than it found you, where you can leave every single week and say, man, I can level up my life in the areas that matter most. So go out there and do that. Be blessed. And Coach Cal, thank you again, my friend. I love you.
Thank you, man.
Thank you. Love you guys too.
All right, see you guys.
Bye-bye.